Welcome to Ignite Your Confidence for women in leadership who want to speak up and stand out. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Here you'll get all of the tips and tools that you need to stand out with unshakable confidence. Let's dive into today's episode. All right, well, we have Rosanna here today, and I'm going to have her introduce herself so she can tell you what she wants to know, what she wants you to know about her. So welcome, Rosanna.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. So I'm Rosanna Berardi. I'm a few things. I'm an immigration lawyer. I'm a mom. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a Disney fanatic. And recently I founded Highwire Women, which is a company and a fun company to help women, quote unquote, do it all. End quote.
I love it. That's actually a really good place to start, because I'd love to talk a little bit about the do it all piece. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, we can't do it all. And anyone says that you can is a liar. I always tell everyone, you can do it all. You just can't do it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been an immigration lawyer for almost 25 years. I started my own firm 16 years ago. It was just me. Today I have a staff of 20. I have a teenage son who's 15. And it's overwhelming. And we're told by society and social media that we're supposed to do all these things that are just not attainable. We're supposed to walk 10,000 steps. We're supposed to hydrate. We're supposed to go on date night. We're supposed to make beautiful meals for our family. We're supposed to be interesting. We're supposed to climb the corporate ladder. Like, how many things can we do? And for years, I would just walk around saying, how many things am I supposed to do? No one's asking my husband to do all these things. He just puts his shoes on and he goes to work. Like, how many things am I supposed to do here? And that's really what had me start Highwire Women, which really is just, I create a lot of content about life hacks and how to, quote, do it all when you can't, but there's a lot of shortcuts in the world that you can take.
Yeah. Can you give us one of those?
Yeah. So my very favorite and one that I can't live without is Instacart. I don't go to buy groceries. People will argue with me all the time. Like, I want to pick out my tomatoes. Isn't it weird that someone picks out your produce? No, it's not. I don't care. Some people are very picky and maybe they care. I don't care if the tomato is perfect or not. I care that I get 2 hours back of my free time by not going. So I use Instacart and every delivery service imaginable to do the things I don't want to do, like, getting the dry cleaning, or, Instacart, you can get gifts delivered. I've sent people cake. I sent people meals. I just am all about automation and only doing the things you have to do.
That's such good advice. Yes. Is there anything in particular that, on that same vein, that you used to do yourself that you really, really just disdained and you're so glad that you gave it up?
Yes, but I have to say this with a disclaimer, because everyone's going to roll their eyes and judge me when I say this, because only a few people in my life know. I stopped doing my own laundry about a month or two ago. I have a cleaning person that comes into our house and does a full clean, and then she'll come in like 2 days a week just to do laundry. And when I tell you, that has been life changing. It is worth every penny that I spend on it, because I'm the type of person, when there's laundry piles everywhere to wash and fold, it makes me anxious and cranky and miserable. Like, after a busy week at work, I don't want to go home and do 7 loads of laundry on a Saturday. I just don't. So I'm turning 50 soon. And my gift to myself was, I've been saying for years, I just want a laundress. That's what I say, a laundress, someone to do my laundry. And I finally found someone that will do it. And I'm happy. I am markedly happier. And I know not everybody can do that, but there are a lot of services that can do your laundry and bring it to your house and stuff. For me, that was one thing that I absolutely hated, such a waste of time. And I made a big change.
That's amazing. Well, and congratulations. Happy early birthday, by the way.
Thank you. 2 months from today.
Yeah,
Not that I'm counting.
exactly. I love it. Well, it really reminds me too. Well, it's sort of funny about the laundry because I live in San Francisco, and when any of our friends have bought a house or gotten a bigger place, it's always the big question: do you have laundry? Yes, because most of us still do our laundry either in a basement of an apartment building or
Yeah,
go to a laundromat. So the luxury of laundry, I get it. And it's really kind of funny because I do most of our laundry in Sacramento at our friend's place. So
Mm,
we schlep it all in the back of our car and do it
wow.
there because it's actually easier than schlepping it downstairs and upstairs. So all the
Oh
different
my
things
God,
that we all have to do or decide what we are choosing to do. And
for
that
sure.
actually is a good reminder to me about prioritization. And that's a hot topic for me right now in particular, because, and that's why I also keened into the do it all piece, just because
Hmm.
that's obviously so many of us women are dealing with that all the time of feeling potentially less than, and also recognizing, I think when you get to be around our age, you kind of go, okay, this is not something that I need to do. What really is the most important thing? And I'm curious to know from your perspective, what would you say is the highest priority thing that you do still choose to do yourself?
Um, so I like to do things that are meaningful and that I can leverage the best
Okay.
in my practice and in my life. So, for example, my son is 15. Um, I insist on driving him everywhere and being present as much as I can.
Mm.
And he's our everything. And I know in 2 years, when he's not in high school anymore, he's not going to need me this much. So I don't travel a ton without him. I'm really plugging into these moments that I have and events and such, because this time is fleeting. So my schedule is very much based around his, and that's very intentional. And if it means I have to leave work at 3 o'clock to go get him from school, then I work a couple hours, that night. And to me, that's a great trade-off.
That's wonderful. I love that. Well, and it reminds me of the power of what you said, intentionality, or that
Hmm.
you're very intentional about that. And I just want to encourage people listening too to think about what is the highest priority thing. Because there's what I find is that we can often get overwhelmed with, oh, well, I want to do all of these things. Well,
Right.
you've got to prioritize and figure out what is it. And even just picking one thing this week and going, not that you would pick your son just this week,
Right. No,
but
for sure.
something like that, and saying, I'm going to try this, see what it is like, and then how
Hmm.
my life shifts as well.
And
So I
we have more control than we give ourselves credit for. We box ourselves into these routines. And yeah, some things we have to do, but a lot of the stuff we do, we just do without thinking. And I've really tried to lean into that, and do things differently. I'm self-employed, so every day I would drop my kid off at school and then run to work and start working. And it dawned on me a couple months ago that, like, I could take myself out to breakfast, and I like to write,
Mhm.
write quietly, and the
Mm.
world will be okay. You know,
Yes,
no
and
one's going to
probably
die. I'm not a brain surgeon, you know, and starting your day like that, even just once a week, has made such a huge difference, because it's a nice, normal way to start the day rather than just jumping in and solving, putting out fires and solving problems. And you know, everyone's got different schedules and stuff, but I think if we can all be just intentional about one little thing, it's not the big things, right? Like,
mm,
you're
mhm.
not going to be able to only work 3 days a week or whatever. That, like, those are really big things. But if you can block off 30 minutes for yourself, it's game changing. I'll tell you, it's those little bites that really change things.
Yeah. How did you get to that point?
I think part of it is age. I think part of it is recognizing, I can't do it all, and I don't necessarily want to.
Mm.
And why am I running this rat race? There's got to be a little bit of time. And, all of us, every woman, I talk about this all the time. We have our busy badge, right? Like when you meet someone, Karen, how are you doing? Oh, I'm busy. I'm so busy, blah, blah. Like, I want to be the person that's like, I'm great. Like, I'm just perfect. And we get this addiction to being busy all the time. And people are like, oh, I don't have time. But yet they're always on social media. They're always on Facebook, right? And you're like, well, you have time. You just aren't recognizing it, right? Or you're not prioritizing it. So I think part of the wisdom has come with age and, running on that hamster wheel for all these years and then saying, this is insane. Like, why?
Yes. Very powerful questions. Yeah, I was just at a retreat for business women, specifically just a 2-day retreat. And most of it, honestly, was play. We did axe throwing. We did painting, there was a facilitated painting exercise. We got photo shoots and our hair done. And it was so fun. I'm like, hey, I'd love to work like this every day.
Yeah.
Part of the point is exactly what you're talking about. It's prioritizing and knowing that time doesn't change. I think it's so funny how people talk about time management, but it's attention management that we need to be concerned about, and how important that is to figure out where do we want to spend our time. And to your point, I think about all the hours that I can spend on Netflix. And I think, wow, if I just spent an hour writing, I also recently went to a wonderful workshop on writing your own story with Donald Miller. And that was so powerful. And just a reminder of the intentionality and the focus during the day. So I would say to anyone listening to think about it, just like you said, Rosanna, and specifically carve out a certain amount of time, even 15 minutes, sit down, set a timer, and just go all in, focusing on that. And I also wanted to piggyback off on what you said about the busyness, because I remember when I would teach time management courses back in the day, I would always joke, can you imagine going up to somebody who's saying like, oh, I'm so busy. And you say, oh, I'm so bored.
I know, right? My life is great. I'm so bored. There's nothing going on. Like no one, everyone's like, and it's funny. I saw my cousin who I hadn't seen in a few years, not long ago. And he's like, so how are you doing? And I'm like, oh, just busy. And then I'm like, no, wait, you know what? I'm not that busy right now. I'm really enjoying my life. Like I just stopped myself. And he was like, oh my God, you're so weird. But that is our societal norm. Yes. We have somehow accepted that.
Right.
And then you wonder why people feel terrible and disconnected and are resigning from their jobs at a record pace. I mean, it hasn't been good.
I know.
It hasn't been good.
Very true. It's very true. Well, let's transition to your journey of confidence. I would love to hear, because you've got such wonderful business. You've got a great life and the way you've created it. And I know that a lot of my listeners will be inspired, as I am, by you. So I'd love to jump straight into, what do you think has been the key to your success related to confidence?
So confidence is really the foundation of anything you do successfully. And when I look back at, okay, how have I become this confident about things? It's kind of twofold. The first is that I was raised by parents who were always just there. My dad was an immigrant from Italy. My mom was a blue collar worker. We didn't have a ton of money growing up, but we were always together, me and my brother and my parents. And I didn't realize until I was older and grown that their constant support, nothing fancy, no trips to Disney World, but just being there to listen or, for advice, or not even saying anything. I used to be in law school studying, and my mom would just come in and give me a little cookie, and just those little gestures made me super confident, because I feel like I've never called myself into question.
Wow.
I always knew that they would be supportive. So I was never like, oh, my mother's going to be mad, or, with my dad being an immigrant, it was always like education. That's all that really mattered to him. But he didn't say you have to go to Harvard and, get an MBA, or you have to be a lawyer. He's just like, just be educated, whatever you want to do, just go to school. It was all school. So part of it's my upbringing, but then the other part of the confidence is I learned at a younger age, not younger, but, well into my 20s, to just turn off the noise, and stop worrying about what everyone else is doing. I've
Mm,
always approached my business as there's plenty of work for everybody to go around. And if I put my head down and work as hard as I can, I'm going to get the results that I have. And I think all too often people are distracted by their competitors and, are like, oh, I can never do what he does. And, I did a big expensive radio campaign a few years ago at one of the local talk stations here in Buffalo. And one of my competitors was already doing it. And I almost didn't do it because I'm like, well, he's doing it. He's probably better than me. I shouldn't do it. But I did it anyway. And I blew him out of the water. And now I'm just a regular
I love it.
there. And I don't have to spend a lot of money to be on that station. But it's just like almost having tunnel vision when it comes to like competition or people that you think are quote unquote better than you, and just, focusing on you and what you bring to the table and turning off that noise. We have so much noise in our heads.
Yeah.
Just work hard and forget about it. Just work hard. You'll be fine. That's really it. Just work hard.
Well, that is amazing about your family, the power of presence, them being there. Wow, that is such a rare thing for many of us. And really wonderful what you said about in general, just work hard and go for it. Was there ever a time where you wished that you had spoken up, for example, but you didn't? And what happened there?
Yeah, for sure. So before I started my own law firm in 2005, I was working at the largest law firm in Buffalo, 300 lawyers, big, big firm. And I was there for 6 years and it was okay. But for the longest time, one of the partners there thought that my writing skills were weak. Everything I would write, he'd be like, oh, you need to improve your writing. You're not a good writer. Maybe we should send you for remedial training. And I
Oh,
mean, I have an English degree undergrad. I could always write. And I was like, what is this guy talking about? Like, I'm a decent or good writer. But I believed that. And finally, towards the end of working, I was like, I can't work in this environment where I'm constantly being squashed. Like my
oh,
spirit is being squashed.
yeah.
And lucky for me, I come from an immigrant family and my father was self-employed, my brother's self-employed. So I'm like, I'm just going to start my own firm.
I love
Well,
it.
I was going to start my own firm. I'm going to leave. And I got to tell you, Karen, for like the first 3 years, that's all I thought about. I'm a bad writer. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I don't know. Maybe they were right. Well, I can tell you now, after having some of my writing published in books, in Entrepreneur Magazine, in Forbes, I can write. And I wish in 2003, 2004, when my boss said, you're not a good writer, I would say, I'm sorry, that's just not true. But it led me to where I am today. So part of me is grateful that I left. And the other thing, and I tell my son this all the time, is that you can't have one person's opinion define you.
Mm-hmm.
To that one law firm, I wasn't a good writer. Well, guess what? To the rest of the world, I am.
Yes.
And, so many times, especially when we're younger, we just take, a coach's opinion of us or a friend's opinion
Yes.
as gospel. And it's just simply not true.
Oh, that is such important information for us to take in. It's so true.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about the moment that you made the decision to start your own firm?
I always think like, boy, that was like a sheerly insane moment in time. But I was like, hey, I'm a lawyer. And this was 2005 when people were starting to talk about working from home, like
Oh,
at its infancy,
mm-hmm.
and some of the lawyers in my practice group at the big firm, they were working from home. So I was like, I'm a lawyer. All I need is a computer. And I'm going to have this little business and I'm going to work from home. I had no idea what I was doing. One client came with me. I literally had one client in 2005. And like, I was just so naive. Like when I think about it, it was insane, but I just knew that I wanted to do it my way. And my plan B was like, okay, well, if this doesn't work out, I'll just go work at another law firm. I mean, I'm employable to a large part.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember that day, and I had just gotten married. I mean, we got married in April. I started the firm on
Oh
June 24th. Very
my
scary
gosh.
time in a new marriage. Yes. And then became pregnant a few months later. And then we built a house and had a baby all in 1 year.
Okay.
Little bit of insanity. I don't recommend doing all of your life events in 12 months, but they're all the things I ever wanted, and I'm completely grateful. And but it was a lot.
Wow. Oh my gosh. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned as a business owner?
So owning a business is like living on a roller coaster. There are ups and there are downs, and there are ups and there are downs. And at the beginning, that's really hard to get used to because everything seems really catastrophic.
Mm.
But what I know to be true is this. I know that if you work hard and you treat people the way that you want to be treated, you will be successful in business. Like parenting, we make it way more complicated than it needs to be sometimes. And yes, I still live on a permanent roller coaster, but my appetite for the big highs and the lows, I'm used to it. I'm used to it. And as long as you're doing a good job and you're doing right by your clients or whomever, you'll succeed. And it's really just getting used to the failures and the people saying no and all that stuff where you're like, oh my God, I don't ever want to fail. And,
Mm.
I have 7 lawyers now, and I tell them I expect you to make mistakes because that's the best teacher. When you make a mistake on a file, you're never making that mistake again. Ever. I can talk at you for 10 years until you do something and screw it up. You're never going to remember it, in that way. So, failure is a super important lesson for business owners. And, we shun it like, oh, I don't want to be a failure. And yeah, you can't fail it all the time, but making mistakes, best teacher in the absolute world when it comes to business.
That's a perfect segue because I wanted to ask you if you'd be willing to share one of the biggest mistakes you've made and how you recovered.
Oh, Lord. Where do I start? It's funny because every year, kind of around this time, I start putting together this list of what I did that worked and what I did that didn't work in business.
That's
And,
smart. Every year you do that?
yeah, because I like to see, like what worked and what didn't.
Mhm.
Like we thought this was a good idea and this was a terrible idea.
Yeah.
And I guess I would say in the earlier stages of my business, I spent a lot of money on things without really doing the research, and it just wasn't necessary. And one example of that is, social media. So there's a million people out there that are like, oh, if you pay me $10,000 a month, I'll get you to the top of Google and,
Mm.
you'll get all this business. And so I would buy into those things. I've never been afraid to spend money. I've
Mhm.
always just wanted to outsource things, but I
Sure.
didn't do the research. And that's an industry that's not regulated by anyone, right? So people can say anything with no consequence. And
Ugh.
what I learned after spending a lot of money, like more money than I care to admit, is that you can do all of that stuff in a very shoestring manner. It's all about content. And there's just very simple things you could do to get to the top of Google.
Mm.
And I'm very involved with an entrepreneurship center here in Buffalo. And I actually teach a little workshop on like marketing on a shoestring budget. It's basically, here's what I learned spending a ton of money. And if you take my workshop, you won't have to spend any of that money, and I'll teach you what I know.
Oh, wow.
And
That's a pretty nice deal.
yeah. And the workshop, I think the University of Buffalo charges like $500. So I'm like, this is the best deal in town.
Wow.
And it's those simple things. But my husband says that I'm a marketer's dream. And to some extent I am. If someone's selling me, you can sell me anything. But I've learned that some things, especially those expensive ones, you got to look into them closely and see, is this really a good use of my money?
Mhm. Yeah, well, you and I share that in common for sure. I always tell people I'm an easy sell if you can show me the reason why.
I'll buy anything.
Buy.
I'll take two, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. Well, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to share?
Well, I would just like to leave your listeners with, this idea of, the shoulds that we live with. Like, I should
Mhm.
be doing this. The holidays are coming up. I should bake cookies with my family. I should go Christmas shopping. I don't know about you, but the should is a very active part of my brain. And I like to share with my employees and my high wire women clients and listeners that, those shoulds are someone else's story, someone else telling you what you should do, not yours. And it's okay to not do those things. I have a lot of younger lawyers on my team and they have little kids. And my one lawyer at the firm hates baking cookies, just is not a good baker. It's just not her thing. And, when her daughter turned like 2, she's like, oh, I have to bake Christmas cookies with her. And I'm like, you don't. If you don't like that, you don't have to do that. You should not have to. Well, but I'm like, she's 2. She has no clue what that means. And get that expectation out of your head and do something that you do enjoy. Take her to the library, do a puzzle with her, do something that you like. And I think so many women, myself included, we get caught up in this should. Oh, I shouldn't take a day for myself. That's selfish. Or,
Right.
I should do this, or I should go to this dinner party. They invited me. No, life is short. Now, don't get me wrong. There are things we all have to do, but we have control over a lot. So I really have learned over time when I'm asked to do something, I pause first, because I like right now, there's a post-it on my monitor of my computer that says family, gratitude, and relationships. Those are 3 really important things to me. Those are like my personal core values. And I have that post-it there because it helps me keep my focus aligned. And when someone asks me to do something like go on a business trip, I'm like, that doesn't really serve my family right now. No. Where before, and I'm not perfect at this, believe me, I struggle just as much as the next person, but I just feel like I'm more mindful of what's important and then toning out the shoulds and making the decisions yours, not someone else's.
Oh, that's so, so good. Yeah, that power of self-agency that a lot of times we somehow feel like we don't have.
For
And that's
sure.
such a good reminder to, yes, absolutely.
We steer the ship. We
Amen.
really, truly do. And we give so much power to everyone else to steer the ship. It's like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
now in the world we live in where things are automated and easy. I mean, our lives are so much easier. Like my life is so much easier than my mother's.
Yeah.
My mother didn't have rotisserie chicken, you know, where you could put dinner on the table for your whole family for $10. Like
Yes.
it
Yes.
didn't exist, like we make it a lot harder than it needs to be.
Yes. It's
Really do.
very true. Well, and you bring up a couple of things around number one, just calling out the word boundaries, like that we all have the ability and actually freedom to be able to say no. And I love what you said about the pause, just stopping, pausing. And I sometimes will challenge people to say, make your default answer no in your head. At
Right.
least
Like, nope.
starting there and then deciding, do I actually want to do this? Or would I prefer to do something else? And this the should piece part two is so much, it's really a shaming word. It's
It
like,
is.
oh, well, it implies the shame. So I'm all 100% with you in all of these things. So where can we reach you, Rosanna?
So the best place to find me is on highwirewoman.com. I have a weekly podcast where I talk to interesting women like you. and help women solve their quote unquote problems. And I say that with air quotes because, it could be money, it could be weight loss, it could be intermittent fasting. I'm just trying to think of some of the people I've talked to. Short, sweet podcasts, lots of fun content on my website. I'm really not selling anything. I'm just sharing what I've learned over time. And I really feel like so much of this is very impactful. And there are these little things that we can do. So the next time you bump into me in an elevator, you're not saying, oh, I'm so busy. Oh my God, the holidays are coming up. No, stop. That's not good. No, we're not doing that anymore.
Well, I absolutely love your heart to help people because you truly are a busy woman and you have a lot going on and you have this huge firm, and the thought of you taking your time out, again, prioritizing, helping others is such a gift of service. So I want to personally thank you for being here today, and I look forward to future conversations.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And that's a wrap of another episode of Ignite Your Confidence. I'm your host, Karen Laus. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps other people find the podcast faster, and it certainly helps me. If you're interested in more tips and tools around confidence, please join me over in my Facebook group called Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laus. Remember, you too can stand out with unshakable confidence.